also provided a cease and desist letter, asking them to cease, quote, all unlawful conduct, namely what they alleged is the, quote, harassing and retaliatory media and online campaign against Miss Lively.
Use this tool of a lawsuit or whatever to get it into the public atmosphere, and now you're not going to allow me the chance to respond in the same avenue? You know what I mean?
Blake Lively's career and public image are crumbling right before our eyes, and it seems like every new development only makes things worse. What started as a simple on-set dispute has now spiraled into a full-blown legal and media battle, with accusations, counter-accusations, and jaw-dropping revelations coming from both sides. But the most shocking part, the longer this goes on, the more it looks like Lively may have completely miscalculated her attack on Justin Baldoni, and now she's the one facing the consequences.
Well, it's still getting messier and messier in the It Ends With Us feud between co-stars Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni.
Let's take a deep dive into the latest developments in this chaotic legal war, breaking down the new claims against Lively, the turning points in Baldoni's lawsuit, and what all of this could mean for her future in Hollywood. The drama kicked off when Lively filed a lawsuit against Baldoni, accusing him of creating a toxic environment on the set of It Ends With Us. She claimed that he made inappropriate comments, engaged in unprofessional behavior, and even orchestrated an online smear campaign against her. But instead of Baldoni backing down, he hit back even harder, launching a massive lawsuit of his own, one that could cost Lively everything.
You're not kidding when you say this is getting messier. The author of that book deleting her Instagram account, another who plays Baldoni's sister in the film, being harassed online.
At first, it seemed like the public was on Lively's side. After all, she has spent years cultivating an image as Hollywood's golden girl, someone who is effortlessly charming, talented, and scandal-free. But as more details came out, that carefully crafted image started to crack. Baldoni and his legal team didn't just deny her claims, they went on the offensive, accusing her of manipulating the media, distorting events, and even using her powerful connections to silence him. And then came the footage. Baldoni's team released unedited video from the set of It Ends With Us, the very scenes that Lively had pointed to as evidence of Baldoni's inappropriate behavior. But instead of confirming her version of events, the footage painted a very different picture. The moments she described as uncomfortable and inappropriate, they appeared to be nothing more than standard Hollywood direction and improvisation, with Baldoni and Lively both engaged in what looked like a completely normal scene between two actors.
This creepy Baldoni getting close to her, obviously making small chatter not in character so as not to make the scene, which didn't require dialogue, awkward. And he says it smells good.
Lively, who had expected the footage to support her claims, suddenly found herself on the defensive. Her legal team scrambled to spin the release, arguing that the video actually confirmed her allegations, but by then, the damage was done. Public opinion was shifting, with many people now questioning whether Lively had exaggerated, or even fabricated her accusations against Baldoni. And then came the lawsuits. Not only did Baldoni file a massive defamation case against Lively, but others started coming forward as well. His former publicists, who were named in Lively's original lawsuit as part of the so-called smear campaign against her, turned around and sued her for defamation. Then, crisis PR expert Jed Wallace, whom Lively accused of leading an online attack against her, launched his own lawsuit, claiming that her allegations had destroyed his reputation and cost him millions.
And one of the most significant allegations in Baldoni's lawsuit is that Lively sought to gain control over the editing process of the film.
The lawsuits kept piling up, and suddenly it was Lively, not Baldoni, who was fighting for her career. Lively's team tried to dismiss these new lawsuits as nothing more than retaliation, but the sheer number of cases against her sent a different message. It started to look like she had overplayed her hand, making accusations that couldn't hold up in court and dragging innocent people into a battle that should have never gone public in the first place. Even Hollywood insiders started whispering that Lively might have made a huge mistake. Some reports even suggested that she had turned down multiple opportunities to settle the dispute privately, instead choosing to go public with her accusations in the hopes of controlling the narrative. But now, that strategy seemed to be backfiring spectacularly.
Lively's team has denied all of these allegations. They have responded to this filing, this lawsuit, saying,
The worst part, the legal battles were only the beginning. Behind the scenes, Lively was reportedly losing the support of some of her closest allies. Industry insiders began distancing themselves from her, worried that aligning with her could damage their own reputations. And in a move that truly shocked fans, even Taylor Swift, one of Lively's closest friends, was rumored to be stepping away from the actress. For years, Lively and Swift had been inseparable, attending events together, vacationing as a family, and even featuring each other's children in their work. But now, sources claimed that the pop superstar wanted nothing to do with this legal mess. In fact, some insiders even suggested that Swift was prepared to testify against Lively in court, if it meant protecting her own reputation. If true, this would be ultimate betrayal. But it also made sense. Swift has spent years carefully curating her public image, and she has no interest in getting caught up in a scandal that has already spiraled out of control.
So remember that what Taylor had told Justin was that Blake herself, she said, was Khaleesi, who was the queen in Game of Thrones, and Ryan, her husband, and Taylor were her dragons. Her best friend, although I think best friend is now past tense.
Meanwhile, Baldoni wasn't just defending himself. He was going on the offensive. His legal team started exposing Lively's behind-the-scenes behavior, painting her as someone who had been difficult to work with and even manipulative. They pointed to text messages, emails, and witness statements that suggested Lively had been trying to exert control over the It Ends With Us production from the very beginning, clashing with Baldoni and other members of the creative team. And then, just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse for Lively, another bombshell dropped. Former colleagues and industry insiders started speaking out, painting a very different picture of Lively than the one the public had always seen. Some described her as controlling and dismissive on set, someone who was used to being the center of attention and didn't take well to being challenged. Others accused her of being difficult to work with behind the scenes, with one former actress from Gossip Girl even claiming that Lively had been rude and dismissive toward extras during her time on the show.
We can now all agree that the moral crimes committed here by Ryan Reynolds against Justin Baldoni have amounted to high treason.
All of this contributed to a growing sense that Lively wasn't the innocent victim she had initially portrayed herself as. Instead, she was starting to look like someone who had tried to use her influence to take down Baldoni, and failed spectacularly. Now, with multiple lawsuits against her, a crumbling public image, and even her closest friends reportedly turning away, the big question is, can Blake Lively recover from this? Or is this the beginning of the end for one of Hollywood's most untouchable stars? And perhaps the most important question of all, if Lively did exaggerate or invent these claims against Baldoni, what does that mean for the future of high-profile accusations in Hollywood? Because if there's one thing this case has proven, it's that public opinion can turn in an instant, and right now, it's turning against Blake Lively. But this is just the beginning. Next, we'll take a closer look at how this scandal is affecting Lively's career, what Hollywood insiders are saying behind closed doors, and whether she could really be banned from the industry altogether.
So I'm just going to very quickly, before I give you all of the tea that I got over the weekend, I'm going to go over the biggest revelations from the filing.
If Blake Lively thought things couldn't get any worse, she was very, very wrong. The legal war with Justin Baldoni was already spiraling out of control. Her reputation was taking hit after hit, and now something even more damaging was happening. People she once counted as allies were quietly stepping away, distancing themselves from the chaos she had created.
George, this is a big mess for everyone involved. The legal drama playing out in multiple courts now, literally from coast to coast, and all kinds of people close to these stars, from personal trainers to friends like Taylor Swift, finding their names mentioned as part of this ongoing fight.
And the most shocking betrayal of all, Taylor Swift. For years, Blake and Taylor had been inseparable. They weren't just Hollywood friends who posed for a few pictures and called it a day. These two were like family. Taylor had mentioned Blake's children in her music. They vacationed together, and Ryan Reynolds, Blake's husband, was often seen alongside Swift at various events. But suddenly, things weren't looking so friendly anymore. Rumors started circulating that Swift was taking a step back from Blake, not wanting to be dragged into a legal mess that had nothing to do with her. And then came the real bombshell, whispers that Taylor might even be willing to testify against Blake if it meant protecting her own reputation.
He literally tells Ryan he wants to be friends with you. And I could just see Ryan sitting there like, yes, this is exactly what I want, a puppy to kick in the mouth. And you'll do what I say.
Think about this. Taylor Swift, one of the most powerful figures in the entertainment industry, choosing to publicly distance herself from Blake Lively, someone she once called a best friend. That alone speaks volumes about how toxic the situation had become. But Taylor wasn't the only one backing away. Industry insiders were reportedly growing more and more uneasy about being associated with Lively. Hollywood is a place where loyalty lasts only as long as it's convenient. And right now, Blake was becoming more of a liability than an asset. People were starting to ask a very uncomfortable question. Was she about to become unhireable?
Genuinely, Steph, if you're watching this, I genuinely don't like Blake Lively. Like, I genuinely know. I've known she's a brat. Nobody's paying me to say this.
Because, let's be honest, Hollywood has turned its back on stars for far less. Blake had spent years cultivating an image of being effortlessly charming, professional, and scandal-free. But now, with multiple lawsuits against her, accusations of manipulating the media, and even former colleagues speaking out about her alleged behind-the-scenes behavior, that image was crumbling fast. And it wasn't just the legal battle that was making people rethink their loyalty to her.
No one's told me to say this. I think people really didn't like her during those premiere things, and there was no plot against you, okay? Come down from your high horse.
Other actors, past co-stars, and even former colleagues were coming forward with stories that painted a much different picture of Blake Lively than the one the public had always seen. One of the most damning allegations came from someone who had worked with her years ago on Gossip Girl. Actress turned TV chef Rossella Rago didn't hold back, calling Lively horrendous to work with and claiming she had an attitude that made the set unbearable. According to Rago, Lively would act as if extras and crew members were beneath her, rarely acknowledging them and even communicating through a director instead of speaking to people directly. But the most bizarre accusation, Rago claimed that Lively had no problem burping and creating an unpleasant atmosphere between takes, acting as if the people around her should feel grateful to be there. Now, on its own, this might have been brushed off as a former extra looking for attention. But in the context of everything else happening, it only added fuel to the fire. Suddenly, people were starting to wonder, had Lively always been this way? Had she just been good at hiding it until now? And then there was Ryan Reynolds. For years, Blake and Ryan had been seen as one of Hollywood's strongest couples, funny, loving, and supportive. But now, whispers were circulating that even Ryan was feeling the pressure of the scandal. He had been dragged into the lawsuit alongside his wife, accused of playing a role in the alleged smear campaign against Baldoni. And while he had always stood by Blake in public, insiders suggested that behind the scenes, things were much more complicated.
Down a woman's claim.
She is claiming that there was sexual harassment. He's saying none of it is true, never happened, never did.
Ryan is a businessman. He has built an empire beyond acting, with his various ventures making him one of the most financially savvy stars in Hollywood. And the last thing he needs, a scandal that could damage his brand. Some sources even claimed that Ryan had advised Blake to settle the issue privately from the start, warning her that going to war in the public eye could backfire. But if that's true, it seems Blake didn't listen, and now they were both dealing with the consequences.
Blake Lively's team says that in showing this video, they are blaming the victim here. They also say that they'd prefer litigating this in court rather than in the public sphere.
And it's not just his business empire that's at stake. Ryan has several major film projects lined up, including the highly anticipated Deadpool sequel. With Disney involved, he can't afford to be caught in a controversy like this, especially with so much money on the line. Studios are notoriously cautious when it comes to protecting their investments, and if Blake's legal mess starts to overshadow Ryan's projects, there's a real possibility that it could affect his future deals as well. Some insiders have even speculated that this might be why we've seen far less of him publicly supporting Blake than expected. Could he be quietly preparing to protect himself if things go south? Meanwhile, another major name is reportedly watching the situation unfold closely: Sony Pictures. It Ends With Us was their film, and while it was a box office hit, the controversy surrounding it has turned the movie from a success story into a legal nightmare. There are whispers that executives at Sony are furious about how this has played out, with some even regretting ever getting involved in the project. The last thing a major studio wants is for one of their films to become synonymous with lawsuits, leaked footage, and public feuds. If Blake becomes seen as the reason for this disaster, it could make studios think twice before working with her again. Meanwhile, Baldoni wasn't slowing down. His legal team was doubling down on their claims that Blake had orchestrated an entire campaign against him, twisting events to fit her version of the story. And the more evidence they presented, unedited footage, text messages, and witness statements, the more it started to look like Baldoni might actually have a case. Worse yet, his lawsuit wasn't just about proving his innocence. It was about making Blake pay. A $400 million lawsuit isn't just a legal battle, it's a career-ending threat. Even if Blake managed to fight it off in court, just the sheer weight of that number was enough to send a message. Baldoni wasn't backing down, and he was willing to take this all the way.
And I think, the whole Hollywood glam, it's so glamorous and everything. Can you relate to the things they were saying about Hollywood? It's so easy to get seduced by the fame and the money and the glamour.
You see it all the time. That was one of my favorite things about the movie, were the subtle turns to their own transition into like the ego.
And that's the real danger for Lively, because even if she wins in court, she's already losing in the court of public opinion. The media frenzy surrounding this case has been relentless, and every new development makes her look worse. Whether it's the lawsuits piling up, former colleagues speaking out, or even her closest friends stepping away, the damage is being done in real time. Hollywood is watching. Producers, directors, and executives are paying attention to how this unfolds, and not in a good way. Plenty of stars have survived scandals before, but when you become a risk, when working with you becomes more trouble than it's worth, that's when the industry moves on.
And that also, they say, includes us responding in the public to the montage dancing video that we put out. Why? Because, quote, the Lively Party's counsel publicly described the contents of video footage relating to Miss Lively's allegations as damning. Their statement continued, any woman who's been inappropriately touched in the workplace will recognize Miss Lively's discomfort.
And right now, Blake Lively is looking more and more like a risk. So what happens next? Can she turn this around? Or is this the beginning of the end for one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses? Will Taylor Swift publicly distance herself even further, or will she stay silent and let the rumors speak for themselves? And perhaps the biggest question of all, if all these accusations and lawsuits continue to stack up, will Blake Lively find herself unofficially blacklisted from Hollywood? One thing is for sure, this story is far from over, and the next move Blake makes could determine whether she salvages her career or watches it go up in flames. What do you think? Is this the end for Blake Lively, or can she somehow recover from this? And do you believe the rumors that Taylor Swift is pulling away from her? Let's talk about it in the comments.